No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it? You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey, gardeners. Hope you're all having a great week. I'm just here working on sowing out all of our different pepper varieties. I've chosen out all of my different varieties. I've got all of our seeds here from the peppers that we're going to grow this year. I've got another tray right up here waiting. We got our chart. And I'm just getting everything sown out. I'm excited. Whole new garden season starting here right at the beginning of the year with sowing out our peppers to get started indoors. They'll grow indoors for several months until we get close to our last frost date, and then they'll get out into our gardens outdoors. But always a fun time of year when we're getting started sowing out our seeds. So all right, everybody. Let's get growing. All right, my garden enthusiasts and passionate plant people. It's Saturday. It's time for the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today, and we've got a really great show ahead for you today, so you'll want to stay tuned. We've got really amazing guests here today with us. A little bit later on the show, joining us live from Australia. So he's joining us real early and from the future. In fact, it's actually Sunday for him. It's Saturday for us. It's early Sunday morning for our guest, Marty Ware from Marty's Garden, joining us from down under in Australia. Going to be great to catch up with him there because down in Australia, they're right in the middle of their summer gardening season. So Marty's full in it when it comes to gardening and growing right now. Something that we're only dreaming of and thinking about as far as what's coming up for us in our future gardens. So he's right in it, and we're going to dig right into what he's got growing on there in Australia. So stay tuned for Marty just a little bit later on here in the show today. And then here in just a few minutes too, we're going to meet Scott Blackburn from New Garden Road. Scott's going to join with us. We're going to talk all about what he's got growing on here this year as well too. So like I said, we've got a couple of really great, awesome guests for you all here today on the show. So stay tuned. You won't want to miss out for sure. But if you are joining with us right now, definitely be sure to click the like button, hit the thumbs up, and also subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Hit the bell notification so you can be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams. I've been putting out some videos. I've got some more videos coming out this next week as well too. That's been my big goal for this year, is to make sure I stay consistent with bringing out and putting out newer videos for you each and every week here on the Urban Gardener channel too. So you will again want to subscribe and hit the bell notification to be notified of those upcoming videos too, and also share with all of your friends here. Let them know that we are here live every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, like I said and just showed you, we got amazing guests here with us each and every week. So you definitely want to make sure you come and join with us and catch up with the gardening conversation. Huge shout out though to all of you as well, because I know right now we are live. But if you're watching this after the live presentation, I really appreciate it. All of you who watch the replay. So a big, huge shout out to all of you. Thank you so much. And I'd love to hear all about your gardens and what you've got growing on this year. Let me know all about any new plans or new things that you've got going on and coming up in your gardens. I'd love to hear about that down in our comments below. But again, thank you for joining with us here on your own time. And again, thank you. to all of you who are joining with us here live as well too. And if you do have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear about all of that as well in the chat there. So definitely jump into the chat. Let me know you're here. Let me know what you got growing on. Let me know where you're growing from. All of that sort of stuff. I'd love to hear about it. So would everybody else in the chat there. So jump into the chat, and if you do have any questions for me or any of our guests that we have coming up, I love it when you guys drop in some questions for our guests as well too. So definitely do that and put them in nice big bold capital letters there so that I can see the questions from the conversation. So right on. Thank you so much. And also check out links down below for our guests as well too. I've got links for them. We got links for our other social media and everything as well too. So check that all out. And again too, like I said, we got a great show for you here today. But if you missed last week's show, you'll want to go and catch up with last week's show. Last week we did our 100th gardening show here at the Let's Get Growing show. We had our guest Wendy Fan with us from Wendyland on the show with us. And we got to meet Pearson Wilhite on our Are You Following Me segment. So definitely you want to go back and check out that really fun conversation as well too, if you didn't. And also any other ones. Like I said, we got great guests every week. We've got a great list of shows. We've got over 100 different shows now on our live page with all sorts of great guests. Maybe one of them are your favorite gardeners, and maybe you want to catch up on a good conversation here on the show with them as well too. So check out our live page as well. And also this last week too, we got to have a great conversation with our good friend Gardener Scott Wilson from the Gardener Scott channel joins with us every second Sunday of the month, and he was on with us last week as well to answer all of your gardening questions. Gardener Scott's master gardener I turn to all the time to figure out certain things going on in my garden. So it's great to catch up with him every month on the second Sunday of each month to answer all of your gardening questions. And we had a great conversation, and it's always fun each and every month to be able to catch up with him and see what he's got growing on, and answer all those awesome questions that you guys bring to the conversation. So we've got lots and lots coming up here. As you saw, I've got my peppers I just got planted out, and finally I've got something seeded out for this year. I mean, I've been growing some other things. We've got like some microgreens that are already growing. I also, started this next year's first crop in the last fall. We plant out with our garlic. So all of that stuff's kind of already growing. I got some greens and some lettuces that are, kind of making it through the winter time out there in the back garden. But this is basically just the gearing up and getting started and getting going with our 2025 growing season. And usually right after the very first of the year, right after New Year's, I jump right in and I get all of my peppers started, and I get them started growing indoors. So I have a whole indoor process that I kind of go through for the next couple of months that they'll grow here inside the house before I'll take them out and start doing a hardening off process and getting them ready to go out into the spring garden when we get closer to our last frost date. I get them out just a little bit earlier than what our actual last frost date is, but we have this whole process, and that's one of the things I'm going to be doing. I mentioned I've been putting out some new videos and everything. That's going to be one of the things I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take and make a whole like playlist and series, taking everybody through my process that I go through with growing my peppers indoors. I got a whole bunch of tips and little tricks and things that I do along the way, and things that I can show you how I kind of set things up. And because I kind of go through a couple of different phases with a couple of different types of light stations per se that I have. And so it's a whole thing. It's going to be really fun. I'm going to start putting those videos out this next week, and you can follow along with my pepper garden process. And part of that process too, I will also say, is getting back onto our roof rooftop garden. I've been really kind of excited about that, getting back up onto the carport rooftop. We got a nice, it just gives us the most full sun that we can get right there, and for years ago, I grew peppers up there and had this really cool, fun container pepper garden up there, and then had to take it down because the previous owners finally figured it out after years of me having it up there that they didn't like it. I had to take it down. It was a whole thing. I did some videos about that, and with the new owner now and everything, I can go ahead and get back up there. So that's gonna be a whole part of the process. Got a whole bunch of stuff in store. You're not going to want to miss out on those videos too. So look for those coming out this coming week as well too. So we got lots and lots growing on here at the Urban Gardener channel. Let's catch up with what we got growing on here in the chat. See who we got with us today, and of course, we got to start with our good friend and moderator Jay Dixon in the chat there, joining us from Midwestern Ontario, Canada, and facilitating our conversation there in the chat. Lots of great links and all of that. If you got a channel or anything and you're new to the show or new to the chat, definitely let us know that you've got a channel. Jay will get a link out for that. Yes, thank you, Jay, for helping us out here on the show there. Let's see here. I saw that we had an early comment put in here from Venice Weeks. I hope that Venice is here with us. I know this was well before the show got started, but she says that she was looking forward to this awesome catch up with catch up because Marty's been on the show before, so we're going to catch up with him and Venice joining us from Townsville, North Queensland, Australia. So it's nice and early there as well too for Venice. Thank you so much for joining with us and checking out this fun conversation. Really great to have Marty here with us today. He's going to be here live. Like I said, that's really early for him in the morning. So he's up early. I actually just talked to him just before we got started with the show. So he's up early, ready to go here. We'll be talking with him just a little bit later on. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned with us there. Rob from Rob's Allotment Gardening, thank you so much. Good to see you joining us from all the way now over on the other side of the other ocean, over on the other side of the Atlantic. We got Rob joining us from the UK there at Rob's Allotment Gardening. Thank you so much. And then also just from right down the road, right close to home for me here, my good friend Adam Burley joining with us from Central Point, Oregon. Great to see you, Adam. Awesome. I see we got Bowtie Life in the Garden. I see Darth X is joining in. He says, what time is it in Australia? In Australia, it is, I believe right now we're about 15 minutes after. So it's about a quarter after 6 in the morning, but on Sunday. It's Saturday for us. It's actually early Sunday morning for everybody over in Australia right now. So yeah, nice and bright and early, and from the future as well too, as I like to say. Just like Rick, I know Rick, he's joining us from Australia, so it's good to see Rick here again. He's always joining with us most weekends here on the show, and I always tease Rick is joining us from the future. So that's what we got. We got a bunch of folks from the future in the chat, and Marty joining with us just a little bit later on in the show. So right on. Good to see all of you here. I see Sam's in the conversation. Awesome, Sam, to see you here. Yeah. Great to see everybody. Make sure we give everybody a shout out if we can. But again, thank you all so much for joining with us here on today's show. We're going to get moving along here. We've got a really great guest with us coming up here. From the channel New Garden Road. We got Scott joining with us in just a couple of minutes. Let's see. I see MPK here he says it's been a busy week. Can't wait to start my seeds next week or so. Yeah. It's a great time. Like I said, I was just saying that just a few minutes ago, getting started with my pepper seeds, and it's always a great part of the gardening season. In the new year when we get those first seeds started and the whole new season gets started. Really great time for me here too. I see Connie there joining with us. Thank you so much, Connie. Thanks for being here. Right on. Gma Grows here as well too. We got Big Will Dog in the conversation, in the soil. Awesome. Good to see you, Jersey Girl. Everybody for jumping in here. It's always great to see all of you here. And again, like I said, we've got a great show coming up for you here today. And we'll be right back here in just one moment, and we'll get to meet our very first guest today. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop, here with another trivia question. Which of the following is not essential for growing seeds? A, sunlight, B, nutrients, C, soil, or D, water? We'll be back with the answer a little later in the show.
All right. You got the answer to Sarah's trivia question there. Definitely jump in the comments there and let us know, and we'll return back for our next break with Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop there and get the answer to her trivia question. And I see we've got Tony from Simplify Gardening joining us there again. We got a really great international audience going on today. Tony joining us from the UK. Oh, and I see as well our guest today, Marty's Garden, in the conversation already. So he's there in the conversation. Awesome. Great to see you, Marty. Right on. So yeah, great to see everybody. I see everybody's already got a great conversation going on there. We got some guesses and some thoughts on Sarah's trivia question. So right on. So yep. All right, let's get moving along today. We got some great conversation ahead for you today. So let's get started and see who we're following this week.
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right. We got joining with us from Central Texas. We got Scott Blackburn from New Garden Road joining with us on our Are You Following Me segment today. Thank you so much, Scott, for joining with us today. Great to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is
Yeah.
really cool show you got here.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. What makes it really cool is getting to talk with really awesome gardeners like yourself. I've been checking out and seeing what you've been doing there at New Garden Road. Really, really enjoy what you do there. And again, too, it's always great to catch up and talk with people who share, a passion for gardening and growing. So,
yes, people who are willing to listen to nonstop gardening garden talk, right?
That's right. Exactly. Right on, right on. So as I mentioned there, you're joining us from Central Texas, right?
Austin, city of Austin, about
City of Austin.
5 minutes
Excellent.
from downtown.
Right on, right on. So so for those of us who don't live in Texas or down there and all of that, so what are we kind of looking at? You guys we're in winter time right now. Is it some really cold temperatures? Are you getting out? Are you doing any gardening or growing at this present time?
Yes, I garden year round in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's, I have a collection of container grown citrus trees, varieties of herbs that are grown in raised beds, some other container plantings, and a full array of Asian greens, kale, broccoli, radishes, carrots, root crops, and some fava beans. Got a little bit of those out there, and some peas. We can garden pretty well into the winter. It can be 80 degrees into December, and then what happens sometimes, like this next week, it goes the other way, and we get into like the 20s. So we've got several nights in
Mm,
the 20s, and
yeah.
I like to bull through it the best I can because I want to grow some food, and it's only about 6 or 8 weeks really that we have to get through, and then it's a really fast and furious spring.
Yeah, exactly. I somewhat similar for me here in Southern Oregon as well too, but yeah. So again, too, lots and lots and stuff coming up here for our 2025 season. Anything you got coming up this year you looking forward to? Anything new happening in your garden, maybe?
Yeah, well, I'm always experimenting. I really like growing crops that are kind of outside of the norm. So I got some
Yeah,
tropical root tubers, some turmeric, some ginger. So far, I have like some white and some red turmeric, and I just from a friend picked up some uh, blue turmeric, and we can grow those. And I just harvested my crop from growing this year. Um, and then I'm big on growing corn. Last season, for the first time I grew some flower corn. It was the Cherokee White Eagle, and
okay. Yeah,
it was so beautiful. I had no idea. I mean, I've grown a lot of sweet corn, and I love that stuff. But man, this was like some trophy corn, and my whole intention is to save those seeds, share them with
yeah,
others, because I think they're relatively well adapted for us here, and I really want to go through the process of nixtamalization. Making some
yeah.
hominy and some grits from my homegrown corn.
Oh yeah. Wow, that sounds like a fun project. And again, too, one of the awesome things about growing your own food and all of that sort of stuff is, getting to go through that process, grow it out and everything, and then get to enjoy those when you cook them up. So yeah, that sounds great actually. I should try some of that. I'm gonna do a different variety of corn myself, but I'm always kind of trying new and different ones and seeing what works well, for kind of what is my limited ability. I grow on some alleyways, so I
Uh-huh.
can, I try to bunch them up the best I can because we need a bunch of them growing together.
Yeah.
But I only got so much space, and I try growing them out, different ones each and every year and all of that. But yeah, got to try some of that, more of that type flour or a grain corn is something
Hmm.
that's something I haven't really tried that much of at all.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch it grow. It really comes on quick, and by the end
Mhm.
of February, we can direct seed our corn. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a race because once we get to May, we're easily into the 90s, and it can flip and be 105 for a good
Mhm.
stretch. So some of those crops, you kind of gotta race to the finish line.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and like you said though too about corn, it's a quick grower. It's one of the more fun crops, especially if you're growing with kids and all of that. They like quick results and seeing things that really grow fast. And corn is one of those. It just gets going, and when it gets going, it's good. It's good for warmer temperatures and seasons as well too. Mine always seem to grow really, really well, even though I'm growing in this very limited alleyway space. We did grow some over at my friend's place. We got some really big plots out in his front yard garden, so we were able to put together like a really bigger plot of some of this really good sweet corn we grew last year, and it did really well, you know. And so, yeah, but again, I have to think about growing some green corn and trying that out. I've never done that
You
before.
should do it. Yeah. I mean, I have about, it's 32 square feet. So it's like a 4x8 raised bed.
Yeah,
I can get like 48 plants in there. And
yeah,
that's a decent amount of corn for me. You know, I have a
y-
small family, so uh,
yeah.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, really, and getting to grow that plot that we did over at my friend's place really went to show like how much you can really get from, you know, and I always get enough, and you know, and from what I grow over in my place and the smaller patches I've got, you know, but I'm always like, oh, I could use some more. And then this time we grew, you know, this bigger bunch of them, and you can easily see how much it, you know, how much it really takes before you can really, you're really stocked up on it more than you actually need.
Yeah.
But between the both of us, me and my friend, though, we went through it pretty well. So
Nice.
yeah, right on, man. So again, thanks for joining with us today. Let's take, you know, I want to ask you a little bit again. Always talking with new gardeners we get on the show, you know, about, you know, your garden story and how all this stuff got started for you. I mean, something gets sparked at us at some point in time in our life, you know, if we're going to end up on YouTube and making videos about our, you know, about our passion for gardening and growing. But tell us a little bit about where your journey started.
Yeah. So, I mean, it all goes back to New Garden Road in Greensboro, North Carolina. So
Okay.
the namesake for my channel. It's a throwback to my family. You know,
Okay.
growing up there when I was about 4 years old, my dad, he was a hospital administrator. So he did this kind of on the weekends and the evenings, but he had about 2,000 square feet uh, of kind of
Yeah.
like some row plantings. And I remember, you know, following him when he was like working he had a big old Troy built tiller, you know, and
Right.
he would like walk beside it. You know, I thought that was really cool looking. Uh,
Yeah.
and he would grow corn and beans and tomatoes and cucumbers.
Yeah.
And you know, before that, uh, one day I got the idea to go out there and harvest some okra. So
Hmm.
you know, okra is one of my favorite crops. I could easily say that about a ton of crops, but
Yeah.
this one in particular, I found a pocket knife and I went out there to harvest some okra and ended up fooling around and getting myself in the leg with that pocket knife.
Oh my.
So
I.
in retrospect, I'm really proud that that was my first gardening injury at the age of 4, trying to pick okra. But yeah,
Trying to pick okra. That's great.
it came back around. You know, there was some time my dad was always gardening. He did a lot of roses and daffodils and irises, and he would just propagate them, and you end up with thousands, right? And
Yeah.
my mom had a lot of containers that she gardened in. So I was around it constantly. And during the summer, you know, we always had like, I remember if it wasn't fried okra, we would have like some fresh squash, like, um, and some cucumbers and a bowl of ranch dressing.
Oh yeah.
Just like dip them in the ranch dressing and eat them kind of like
Mm-hmm.
with your dinner. So
That's right.
I didn't realize it at the time, but you know, having fresh homegrown food that I was exposed to at such a young age, it was really powerful. And
Yeah.
like, you know, also not realizing that not everyone experiences that. So I think it just came back around for me full force with respect to all that.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds, you know, well, more so. I mean, I never got that kind of great kind of gardening experience when I was younger. But for when it kind of hit for me similar though too, where there was this moment when I grew my first plant, cucumbers, in fact, you know, and I'm sure there was probably some ranch being eaten with it when my daughter was eating with me there though. But there was that moment where it was just kind of like this realization, this empowerment that came from the fact that I grew this and we were eating that, you know what I mean? And it didn't, you know, we didn't go over to the store and purchase it, you know, it actually came from, you know, our, you know, it was a balcony I was growing off at the time, but it was, you know, it was still really a powerful thing to be able to grow your own food and to be able to, you know, to be able to experience that. And so that's kind of where, you know, for me, and the same thing, it kind of came back, or, you know, my growing experience came to the growing food. And then again, too, like I said, here we are, you know,
Yeah.
creating videos and doing things about it because we're really passionate about it, and you know, and have learned a lot along the way, you know, too. So you know, tell me a little bit more about the garden you're growing today. You know, what do we got, you know, besides, you know, we've touched on some corn and all of that, you know, what kind of other things are we finding in your garden?
Growing a lot of kale and different varieties of kale. You know, I've got,
Okay.
you know, I'm really into crop diversity and
Mm-hmm.
exploring different crops, and uh, it kind of ties me up because I'm into seed saving too. But you know, I can't really isolate things because I want to grow so many different varieties. But I've
Yeah.
got some rainbow lacinato, dazzling blue. There's one called Wild Dreams that's got definitely some variations in it, you know, in the leaf pattern.
All
Um,
right.
and the Curly Roja, which is really beautiful right now. It's that deep, like deep purple, because we've had some good cold weather. Um,
Yeah.
and yep, so I'm foraging, you know, some fresh greens every day, and I've got uh, some fresh herbs that I like to throw in, and mushrooms. I've been experimenting with outdoor mushroom cultivation
Okay.
because you know I'm involved with a nonprofit where we do
Yeah, I was
block.
going to mention that. Yeah, the Central Texas Mycology.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's you know it's a you know, they want to expand the conversation around mushrooms in our area and kind of, you know, demystify it for the public, but also there's just so much to it. I think it's really fascinating, and people really seem to be interested in it. They do a lot of events, educational based events, talks, cooking demos. But the one thing that I've been involved with a lot is the block rescue. So that coordinates between the mushroom farm and
Okay.
volunteers to redistribute the blocks to divert them from the waste stream, and
Okay.
they can still grow mushrooms at that point. So you can do it inside, and it can be real controlled, or you can put them out in your garden and let the kind of seasonal weather trends make use of them. Like I'll check on them every day, make sure they don't dry out, and I go out there and there's like a flush of lion's mane or the black pearl or some of the piopini are really good. So that's really good this time of year when we're cooler and we're getting maybe a little rain.
Yeah.
Then I cycle those mushroom blocks, which are primarily sawdust, and the spores, all that mycelium, into my compost, and I'll compost them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to, yeah. And really interesting. I've been thinking about and learning a little bit more. In fact, I'm growing some mushrooms right now that I got sent to me from a friend of ours here, Mill Creek, and they sent me one, so I'm growing some right now just to kind of experience it. I've never been like a person who really enjoys mushrooms too much. Maybe, you know, I'm going to try it. Maybe we'll see. You know, maybe things have changed, but the experience and the process of, you know, watching these things grow and seeing the different ways that they affect our garden space and our soil and all of that too. You
Mm,
know, that was one of those things that I remember learning early on in gardening. You know, and I still see people who are new in gardening constantly, you know, with these questions each and every year as they start seeing different, you know, fungus and mushrooms and different things in their soil. They start worrying about it, and
right.
in you know, not understanding that this is actually a good thing to be seen. You know, it's a part of this organic structure of the soil that's just really important, and all of that too. So I mean, I myself have been getting more and more into the idea of mushrooms and their effect on our soil.
Yeah, it's a great gateway, I think, into the soil food web. and soil ecology, and then, understanding the whole big picture of how it's connected, just because you kind of visually see that, with the mushrooms. Also, their relationship to growing and establishing trees, I think, is really vital, especially here in Central Texas. We need to, reestablish our tree canopy so we don't continue to burn up quite as much, create some shade for ourselves, but
Yeah.
also grow some food.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And again, like we were touching on just before, it's a really empowering thing. All the different types of gardening. I'm just a plant nerd, whether it's, house plants to, growing flowers, all that sort of stuff. But the food gardening experience is, I think, just one of the greatest because of, again, that empowerment you get from growing something that you get to consume yourself or share with others, that such a different experience than having it grown somewhere else or mass produced even somewhere else and getting it from a grocery store. And you know people constantly talk about how you never tasted anything good until you've grown it yourself, right?
Yes, indeed. And I work with some students at the University of Texas, and we're growing things in the gardens there with them.
Hmm.
And, like, maybe they've never tasted okra, and
Yeah.
they'll try just about anything like fresh from the garden. And so it's really amazing to see someone for the first time like taste a fresh food, and or
Yeah.
maybe they've had it one way, and they're like, this is completely different than the first time I tried it. So there's really a lot to that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's right on, right on. So right on. Anything else you got growing on? I know that we mentioned Central Texas mycology, but you also involved with Central Texas Seed Savers. So
Yeah,
you do a lot of your own seed saving out of your garden.
I do. I really like growing beans in particular, and um, I have a good sized garden, but it's still relatively small. So to grow enough dry beans to kind of feed me through the winter, it requires several plantings. But they're one of the easier
Yeah.
things to save. You really only need about 20 feet of separation. And the southern peas, I'm really keen on, as well as the long beans, the yard long beans. Uh,
Yeah.
those do good here, and I think they're really tasty, fresh. They're much easier to grow than like some of the snap beans that really require that kind of ideal conditions that we just have for kind of a really brief period.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the seed savers are working to establish a seed farm that will basically preserve and cultivate seed varieties that are adapted to Texas, but also culturally important to different groups within our region. And I think overall, like in all areas, we need to be preserving our seeds and saving our seeds, because a majority of our seed stock comes from areas outside of, at least as a Southern gardener, in the Southeast, there's
Mhm.
not a whole lot of seed production. So
Yeah.
I really like that mission, and just trying to help to educate others on some of the basic things they can do to save
Yeah.
seeds. Like, a lot of people love tomatoes; they're crazy
Yeah.
for it, and that's a great one to start with. So
Yep. That is. It is. It's great. Great. And I save a lot of my different varieties that I grow. A few other things that I do seed saving with, like especially my greens. I always save at least a couple of whatever, maybe lettuces or things that I grow. I always leave a couple of those to go to seed so that I can make sure I'm saving seed for next year. That's a nice, real important one. But yeah, I completely agree. Save seeds, learn the process just to have and understand it, and how, again, too, how the plants work. in the long run, is a good just way of understanding the life cycle of the plants that you're trying to grow. So saving some seeds are good. There's some that cross really easily, and you got to worry about that a little bit and stuff with some things. But for the most part, just save certain seeds from different plants and just experiment and have fun with that. It's really, a really, really a great thing. I did want to mention something real quick here. I want to get back to the seeds there. Someone was asking about the mushrooms I was growing, and I saw that Mill Creek jumped into the conversation there too. And so I just wanted to mention that if anybody wanted to grow some mushrooms, they're the ones who sent me my mushrooms, and you could grow some. And I can't think of exactly what the name or the type they are. Maybe they're lion's mane or something like that. But if Mill Creek's
Nice.
still in the conversation, maybe they can jump in and tell you all what they sent me here that I'm growing. And if you want to, you can get some from them as well too. Really
I
great
love
stuff.
lion's mane.
Yeah. But yeah, seed saving is a fun thing. It's something that, I think is fun, is important. And especially if you're growing certain things that you grow each and every year in your garden too, it's good to get in the process of maybe even saving seeds for, for your next year's production and all of that. And then what you're doing is you're really kind of saving and developing a seed type that over several different seasons is really acclimated to your garden and your space. So there's a lot of that goes into it as well too. So there's a lot of really great reasons to be saving your own seed.
And I know some of the types of crops that do well here, like, in the summer, greens are a little bit tricky. It's really
Yeah.
hot, but some that I've gotten keen on, have you heard of Malokia or Egyptian spinach?
Yep.
I really love that one, and it is virtually bulletproof in the garden. It will grow all summer long without shade cloth, and because it's unique and not closely related to anything that's real common in the garden, I've been saving all the seeds I could to share them with others and encourage them to
hmm
grow it, because it's a superfood. It grows well here, and
Yeah.
I think that's something that we need. Um, the premise of eating seasonally and regionally, uh, I think is really vital to us. So seed saving kind of complements that.
Yeah, exactly. Like Darth says here, seeds equal currency. But
Yes.
yeah, in a sense, when it comes down to it, I've been to a lot of really cool and fun seed exchanges and all that. So if you grow some cool stuff and you're saving good open pollinated seed and all of that, then yeah, you got a bit of currency you could take to a seed swap and go and get a bunch of new stuff for your garden while trading out stuff that you've already grown.
That's it.
So yeah, I mean, and again too, those are fun events too. I go to the National Heirloom Exposition every year, and probably one of the most fun parts of that whole exposition is their seed swap. We had our good friend Bevan Cohen on a couple weeks back, and he runs the seed swap down there, and it's really such a fun event. People line up, I mean, like in a line that you can't, just wraps around this whole building and just goes on for forever, it seems, and people just have so much fun. So yeah, save some seeds. Right on. Anything else you got coming up here going on your channel or anything that we can all look forward to? Again, I want to mention to everybody that you can get right down in the description there. We've got a link to Scott's channel, New Garden Road, so you can go over and check out what he's got growing on. But anything you got coming up for everybody?
I've really started to lean into gardening ecology and some of the things that I'm seeing happen in my garden. And after 18 years in one space, I've really evolved to, early on, as I was learning, trying to do all these things and control things, treat for things. And now I'm much more hands off. But I want to tell those stories. I want to bring that to the forefront to try to create some relative understanding for folks, and just being able to, because I feel like it's one of those bits. If we start to try to select and eliminate things that are inconvenient to us, that's like
Right.
a lot of life, right? So the way we can learn to be more accepting and seeing the systems at large, the ecosystem, I think is really helpful. for gardeners long term, because it makes it easier when you understand what your resources are, what your partners are in nature. So I want to really delve into that. But
Yeah.
I do presentations at garden centers around town and for different groups.
Okay.
I
Awesome.
want to bring those presentations to my YouTube channel because not everyone can get there. So streaming a setup is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, so that I can share those presentations on my channel, and just share the insight that I've gotten from countless gardeners in this region and different places I've gone to workshops. Because I think the insight from each gardener is so valuable, and the more that we share it and the more we kind of knit our community together, everyone can do things how they want, but like you said, we share seeds, we share stories and our
Mhm.
experiences, and I think it makes us more strong in the collective.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, like I said, really great stuff there at New Garden Road. Really think what you do is awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for taking your time to join with us today on the show. It's just been really great to meet you. And again, probably look forward to seeing you maybe back on the show sometime in the future. And yeah, thanks
Thanks for
again.
having me. Thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Right on, man. Thank you. Hey, gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits.
The answer to this week's trivia question is C. All plants require certain levels of water, sunlight, and nutrients to grow. But although most seeds are grown in soil, they can be grown in other mediums as well. A great example of this is hydroponics, a system in which plants are grown in a solution of water and nutrients. Thanks for watching. Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop where you can find garden seeds at unbeatable prices. Enjoy the rest of the show and have a great day.
All right, all right, all right. Did you get the answer to Sarah's trivia question there? And I knew this one was going to get let's not say controversial, but in some sense was going to be kind of somewhat of a trick question in a way there too, because ultimately seeds themselves don't really need nutrients in order to start or grow. But ultimately plants eventually going to need some sort of supply of some nutrients as they continue to grow. So that there, but absolutely soil being the answer there ultimately, because yeah, we can grow things hydroponically. We don't necessarily need soil. There's soilless mediums and all that sort of stuff to grow different plants and everything. But yeah, good question. I saw that kind of in the conversation as she asked the question earlier in the show, so I kind of knew that was going to pop up as we were going to get to the answer there too. But yeah, soil being the answer. I hope that you got the answer correct, and if you can, go and check out Sarah at sarahseedshop.com, and go check out what she's got there at her seed shop, and go get some. Like I said, you're not going to find a better value here in the U.S. for getting seeds. I know a lot of people claim to have the best prices and all that sort of stuff, but I'll guarantee you, for essential seeds that you need in your garden, Sarah Seeds got you covered when it comes to the best value you're going to find for seeds here on the internet. So, so definitely go check her out. And again, too, I hope you got the answer to the question correct there. And let's see here. We got a really great guest for you, like I said here at the beginning of the show. So let's get moving along today. He's been waiting in the wings since early this morning. So time to get going with our good friend joining us from down under in Australia.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
So, all right. Like I said, joining us from down under in the future in Australia, we got our good friend Marty Ware from Marty's Garden joining with us here today. Thank you so much, Marty, for getting up so early in the future there to hang out with us here on the show.
Well, yeah, it's an honor. Thank you for having me on. Yeah. I'm up early most of the days anyway, but
that's
a little
perfect.
bit extra early than normal. Just
Last time we had you on, we recorded something ahead of time, and I had you on there with a pre-recorded interview. But this time around, I was like, "Oh man, what do you think? Can you get up early and join us and be a part of the live conversation?" And here you are. So awesome to have you. And again, thanks again for joining with us today.
Thank you.
Right on. So as everybody knows that. Being down under there in Australia means that you're dealing with completely the opposite seasons that we're most of us gardeners here in the States, or even we've got a few joining us from the UK and over in Europe and all of that. So for us, we're dealing with completely different season right now. We're in the middle of winter. Things can be really cold in some places. Some people are dealing with snow, but you are right in the middle of your summer garden season. So tell me about how things are going for you there in your summer garden this year.
It's very interesting times, Enoch, that's for sure. We've had our third wet season in a row. We just had another La Nina event, and then the last one they said no. I think there was no La Nina event, but it ended up being like that anyway. Either way, so we've had a very 3 years of ever since I moved into this new place here, which we're going on 2.5 years now. It's been extremely wet, so it's been challenging, but also I've been learning a lot at the same time on how to protect my garden and how to keep growing on and keep producing a lot of food, and understanding when I have a lot of water or when it's really dry. Because I predominantly, when I studied agribusiness, one of my favorite subjects other than the organics was soils. And so I learned a lot, and I actually studied that unit twice, which is, most people wouldn't do that, but I did that unit twice. I even went back to the teacher and said, "Can I do this again?" I said, "I know that, I passed and everything, no problem, but I wanted to take it deeper." And we're very lucky at that time. So it was around about year 2000. We had phenomenal teachers in the where we were at the college that I studied at. So really understanding soils has helped me a lot to get through this wet season, or even the one that we've just come on again. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. And getting in a little bit of history there, I was going to ask you a little bit too about again too, you've been doing how many years you've been on YouTube now? Because I know you've been around a lot more years than I've been doing things. So
14, bit over 14 now. I think we started with the handy cams and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Or YouTube had like all the this is how you make a video, where you go in hands on and just learn. So a while now.
So you kind of had maybe a little history with cameras and photography and things like that, or is this something that you just kind of jumped into to, just to see what you could do?
Well, I started, just dived in, and
Yeah.
predominantly because I was a single dad for many, many years, raising my daughter on my own. She's hearing impaired and she's autistic. So I needed to really be home a lot. And I was studying. I'd just come back from living in Thailand. I ran a surf school there, and I knew that when I was leaving, that I'd need to reinvent myself. So I started, and the online thing was moving quite quick. So I just started learning about building websites, and I started a gardening website called smallspacegardeninghomes.com, which got
Yeah.
really popular. It was the #1 small space gardening website for many years. And so that sort of helped me move into YouTube. And
Or
those days I
yeah,
used YouTube to promote.
yeah. Was that more of kind of like a blog type of thing? Something you were just maybe posting gardening articles, or were you doing video as well?
A blog website. So we had a blog, and then there was the website, and then we
Yeah.
basically, in those days, YouTube was so new, we used YouTube to promote our websites, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on, right on. And so, what brought about gardening? Was this something that similar, was this something that you grew up with, or is this something you just kind of found later on?
Oh, it's an interesting question because I've always been sort of entrepreneurial, and I never
Yeah.
even knew what an entrepreneur was when I was a kid. All I
Right.
knew was my parents didn't have much money to give me for an allowance, so I had to pretty much earn my own. So I
Yeah.
just used to weed and mow gardens. So I was doing an acre lawn at the age of 10, and I used to get $50 for mowing that. It used to take me 4 hours, and then I'd weed and different things, and I just, so I don't know. It just sort of came naturally to me to be outside and just involved in that. Yeah. So started at a very young age.
Okay, right on. That's great. And then so just like you said, you were just looking for something, a new direction or something, and just thought, let's jump into growing food."
Yeah, well, we started off on a little veranda. Just Marty's
Yeah.
garden started off on a little veranda. So
Yeah.
small space was my thing, and I could see that was coming. But I was probably 8 years ahead of myself. Like it
Right.
didn't really come in till just really the last 3 or 4 years. So yeah, a little bit too far ahead. But yeah, that was predominantly where we started. Then we moved into the microgreens farming, small
Yeah.
urban farming, teaching people how to grow microgreens and set up microgreens businesses. And that was really at the beginning, before it was much seen on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then I sort of, again, a bit too far ahead of the of things. And then I got
Right.
sick, so I had to give that away. And and stop working for a while. So then we made some other changes after I got well again.
Then I think, didn't you start moving into more like worms and worm farming, vermicompost?
Correct.
I
Yeah.
think that's how I found you, was right around that time. Was I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out more about vermicompost, worm castings, and things like that. So,
Yeah.
but then again discovered that your microgreens content, the small space stuff as well, which is the same story for me. I started on, and I mentioned before with our last guest, I started on a patio or a just a balcony basically of an apartment. So so I totally understand the small space thing, but that's kind of where it went next, was with the worms and all of that, right?
Yeah, correct. Because being involved in sort of organics, and what happened was because I was really poor at that time when I was living in the apartment, just taking care of my daughter, and we made a little bit of money through the website, and we got monetized. I was one of the first people, like when they first offered monetization for YouTube, so
Yeah.
we were able to make a
Right on.
little bit of income. So the two with the website and the thing, it was, we survived, but I had to make my own fertilizers, and that's when I really stumbled across worm farming. Then it was so cheap to do, and I was able to make all my own stuff for on my small veranda. So I didn't have to really go out and buy anything. And so then the infatuation just started from there, learning more and more how amazing these creatures were. And they still play a big role in my space today, but we've moved.
Yeah, in fact, we got a question here. We got Tony from Simplified Gardening joined with us in the conversation there, and he asks how the worms with all the rain you've been having, and asks, are those windrows you built still performing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Hey, Tony, good to see you, mate. Yeah. Look, to be honest, we've been, because I make a lot of compost. I sell compost.
Yeah.
And worms play a big role in that. Now, probably the hardest part is when you're hot composting, is it could be still raining and it gets too hot and they've got to move to another spot. So I'm still really learning a lot about that. I thought I'd mastered it, but so I still have quite a lot. And what I've found is because there's not a lot of research that gets shared online on this stuff, and what I found was the night crawler worms are the ones that do the best. So there's the European and the Africans, and they're a bigger worm, and they grow much bigger in windrows than they do in enclosed worm farms, and they burrow a lot deeper than what the information that you get. So when it's dry, they go down deep, and they'll even go into some of the subsoil if you've had a windrow in one spot. And then they come up with the rain. As soon as your compost has cooled down a bit from being hot, they'll come up back into the system and start feeding in there. So I've thought a few times, I've only got them in my barrels. I've lost them in my piles. And then they just turned up again. And then I've dug down deep looking for them. And so I'm still learning quite a lot at the moment about these, but they're doing really much better than expected, Tony. Yeah, so they do love the rain, that's for sure.
Right, exactly. It just kind of sets just the right element up for them, for sure. So I've been really kind of enjoying the worm farming, and which is really kind of, for me, I don't know why I didn't listen to some of your videos and other videos I was researching back in those days. So it still took me quite a few years before I started doing and growing my own worms, producing my own vermicompost. And it's something, one of those things that when you finally do get to getting around and doing that, you wished that you'd gotten started so much earlier. Because again, it's just really so easy to keep a few worm bins, feed them some scraps, and take care of them, and then you're just harvesting your own garden gold. That stuff is all I really need to feed my garden. I can, it's great for my plant starts. I use it in my seed starting mix, just the straight, vermicompost, the worm castings. And then throughout the season, every time I water or feed my garden, I just make a great vermicompost tea, just straight worm castings, and make a compost tea out of that. And then that's when I'm feeding my garden, and I've grown some of my best plants in the last couple of years. I've been doing that. So I don't, one of the things I think I really attached myself to what you are doing in your channel and everything as well, is you also like to take these inexpensive measures. You also like to, show people that gardening can be done without it costing so much money as what we think gardening can, with all the products and things that are out there. There's just a lot we can just do ourselves, and a lot that we just don't need either.
Correct. Yeah. I sort of do recommend that people, if they're not worm farming, or to actually have maybe some seaweed and some fish emulsion on hand. I find that they're probably the two cheapest and best way to get the minerals and back into the plants, and they're probably the only two that I really ever talk about. We grow, actually, I never mentioned this before, but we grow a lot of house plants. You can't see them behind, but it's a bit like you're not as bad as
I can't hide mine.
But predominantly we do it in hydroponics inside, just for the fact that with the humidity and everything and the bad weather we found that we're having problems in our little soil systems. So we do grow 99% of our plants inside with hydroponics now, which I never thought I'd be at that stage. But other than that, outside, yeah, we use so the compost is in everything, and then we've got the liquid that comes out of our specially designed worm farms, the tiered ones, and then the windrows. We've got compost coming out of that we use in the garden and sell. And I find that combination, and then in my pots, I make my own potting mix, but I use, if I'm not using worm casting, the worm tea at the time, I'll use a mixture of the fish emulsion and the seaweed. Sometimes we can't always get all the minerals that into our worm farms that we would like, because a lot of the minerals have been washed out into the ocean. So the seaweed contains a lot of those minerals that get lost. And it's also they use freshwater fish here in Australia, so I don't think that the minerals are probably as high as the sea stuff. But look, as far as, you don't really have to go into that if you don't want to. I think if you've got a really good little worm farm happening, and proven that over and over again, if you're just feeding them a lot of different foods and taking care of it, generally overall you end up with a pretty balanced NPK, and
Yeah.
and you only got to look at your background there, mate, how well your plants are doing. So
Yeah, well, I gave everybody a nice clip. That was my last video I did, and I did a video kind of tour last week on our show. It was our 100th show, so I thought I'd get up and show everybody what they look like up and close. So not all of them are quite as, I mean, you're seeing them kind of at a distance and in the background. You get up and close with them on our last video if you want to check out what we've got growing on back here. But yeah, I love my house plants. I love taking care of them. Again, but growing food is where it's at, is where I've really, my passion really kind of goes when it comes to gardening. Although I like to grow everything. In fact, I'm working on more of like native plants and things, trying to put those around our garden spaces this next year. So there's all sorts of things. Flowers have been a project over the previous years and that sort of stuff. But growing food is just really where I find my passion for gardening and growing really lies.
Yeah, awesome. Same.
Same for you, right? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that too. One of the things that's kind of one of the things that you really focus well on, especially in a lot of your content you've been doing recently and everything, is making videos and talking about producing your own food in a I guess a ever more expensive world, across the globe. Food prices and things like this are just seeming to skyrocket. People are trying to gather more and more profit from people from some of their most essential needs, and food, of course, as human beings, we have to have. And and they're, again, kind of bringing back this idea I talked about previously, this sense of empowerment you get from growing your own food too. Maybe you touch on that a little bit as well too. You think if all these food corporations and companies that have all the food and they set all these prices, they have a certain level of power over you until you kind of take it away, right? And you start growing some of that food for yourself. And now you're producing it yourself, and now they don't hold that weight over you. And that's kind of a really powerful thing, wouldn't you say?
I believe so. And look, you can go down a huge rabbit hole with this question, because it branches off in a million different ways.
Yeah.
But in Australia at the moment, and the more I look into this in Australia and some globally as well, because we have my wife and the family, we have rice farms in the Philippines as well. So we're involved in that, and also growing the food here in my backyard. And I've seen from, being, as I mentioned before, being really poor at the time when I was raising my daughter on my own, to understand more and more about, you can grow this food and save the pennies. But without going down the rabbit hole of the whole farming thing, there's
Yeah.
The farms here, and globally, it's a little bit different. But in Australia, most people are sort of already over retirement age for the farmers, and most people don't want to take on farming.
Right.
There's not really good contracts out there for the farmers, so they grow food, then they produce this food, and they're not guaranteed a certain price always for their production. So they can't, and I've been involved in agriculture. I'm still overseeing a farm about an hour from here where we're about to hopefully produce our certified compost soon at
Yeah.
560 Farms from Pepe Vassos. So people that watch my channel have seen him. So, I'm in contact with him regularly. And so that's the only farm I'm involved in now. But they're open to so many things. So not only like he's a younger farmer, he's in his, he's younger than me, but as far as the evolution of farming here in Australia, it's looking as though if it doesn't go the right way and the right policies are put in place, and we don't want government to get overly too involved, but if the farmers can get a better deal, then we won't have to worry about coming into all these imports and things that's possibly going to have to fill the shelf spaces, right? And then with that will become more processed foods because they'll need to have shelf stable life. And so with that, more health, and I haven't mentioned this on my channel, but there'll be more health problems because I really believe in eating a quality and nutritious food as well. And then we've got so the whole falls into this whole thing of, which I mentioned on my channel. I said, I never thought I'd be thinking of a prepping mindset, but I really believe that we need to start thinking about how we can save money and actually protect ourselves in a way, not only just financially, but physically, mentally, and overall really help our hip pocket to help pay and cover bills, And I tell people to try and get around that 25% on your kitchen plate first, and then, excuse me, I got a bit of a burp coming up.
Oh,
a bit of indigestion.
all right.
So yeah, getting to that 25%, and then just
Yeah.
building on there, and don't stress too much about it. Once you get to that 25%, you'll put in quarter, and that could just be just your salad or just some veggies or just something mixed into the food that you're in your recipes that night, and sort of work from there, and it doesn't become too overwhelming then. So yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole, but it is an oncoming problem here in Australia. And so I'm really becoming an advocate for people to grow even more fresh food than before at their home, whether it just be in a small space or in a larger yard like mine.
Yeah, exactly. And even if, when it comes down to it, you can't grow everything for yourself. That's one of the things that becomes a barrier for folks is, understanding their space and what they're limited to and all of that. And even for small space people, again, I started on a apartment balcony, growing some cucumbers and a couple of other things after that, and so there were some things, and that felt really empowering. I still had to go elsewhere for everything else I needed. But more down the road, learning that there's other places and other things too, if you need to find more space and want to grow more food for yourself. One of the things I found was that you can go to any place where you got nice community board, and you could just post up there, say, hey, does anybody got a yard I can garden in?
Yep.
I'll share the food, and I'll guarantee you'll get people, pull a slip and call your number and say, hey, they got some space for you. Or there's community gardens as well, if you live in a community where there's community gardens. But another thing too, though, and I think, and this is what I think about when I hear you talking about and others talking about the idea of where we're going as far as the future landscape of the foodscape, that sort of thing, is what we can do together as gardeners. One of the things that I talk about all the time is how amazing and how awesome the gardening community is.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of the reasons why I do this show. That's why I've, continue to do the things I do as far as making the videos I do, is because I get to be a part of this really awesome, amazing community. And that's one of the things that we could be thinking about, though, too, is, even on a local basis, is how we can connect with each other too. So maybe there's certain things I can grow and I grow well, and then maybe my neighbor grows some other things better than I can grow, and how can we network together? Because ultimately, as things do get more pricier, or things do start happening to maybe the whole supply chain or that sort of stuff in sort of situations, we really are going to kind of rely on each other to get a lot of what we need if we want to kind of centralize that.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm very community orientated.
Yeah.
As I sell my compost right from my front yard. Well, eventually, soon we'll be selling it from my place, and then from out at 560 Farms in Lismore. But we go to that extra, the extra service of just really helping people, like with their questions, their gardening questions, and even to the point where I get SMSs and things from customers and things saying, asking about a little question to help them. And that's really helped my little compost gardening thing grow, because I see that, you walk into some of the local shops, and say, the example, like a big one like Bunnings, occasionally they'll have, which is one of like our big, I don't know, telco or whatever you got, I can't remember what you call them in America, but it's like our big massive hardware shop, and then it has a gardening section. And occasionally there'll be a good gardener there, or a horticulturist, but very rarely, and they can't answer the questions that people have, or they don't have time. So I've really gone into that sort of sideline of really helping people out. I walk them around the garden. I put a little link in the private chat there, a photo of my garden. I don't know if you can maybe pull that up. It just shows like a quarter, 1/3 of it, sort of thing. But
Right.
so I walk them around and show them what I'm doing. And some local people have started following my systems, and they get really good results. Now, as far as if you don't live locally, one of the beautiful things that YouTube is doing is, if all goes well, the community tab is going to have like a Facebook sort of style feed in it. Now, this is game changing for what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The tricky part is going to be, obviously, I don't know how it's going to be managed and controlled in a way where you don't get haters and people hating on each other and trolling and that type of thing. But as far as people sharing in there, and like not just being all about me, because I really, when I make my videos, I'm like, hey guys, drop in the comments, share in here your knowledge, share in here your values, your tips, these things, and pass them on to others in the in the comments. And mate, it blows me out, something that I learn from just in there itself. So I'm really looking forward to this community tab being rolled out. It's being trialed at the moment. I've been told about it by YouTube, and so I'm looking forward to see how it goes. And I'm hoping that we just don't get a bad experience, and that it becomes really something beneficial for everyone. It'll change the world of gardening for sure, if it's run effectively. And who knows, I'm a bit worried about bots and these type of things coming in, but we'll just have to see how it rolls out. But it could be really awesome for something like you've just mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's as we're in an ever-changing world, and again, a lot of those sort of things are changing for everybody. And so I think more and more people are turning to gardening and are turning to growing. And again, too, I think that's why it's really great, again, as we get to see each and every weekend here on our show all of the different people that are out there who are sharing their knowledge and their inspiration, their experiences and things with everybody else, in order to kind of bring them along and help them along in finding their own empowerment within this food growing system and everything.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people, you can grow a lot more in a small space than people think. And microgreens have sort of like, I notice you've got Mike Van Doozy coming up in a couple of shows.
Yeah, yeah.
He's the master at microgreens now for
Yeah,
like
I think so, for sure.
a lot of content on it. He doesn't always talk about it being microgreens, but he does it hydroponically, of course. So it's a little bit different to how I grow. But if you want to just produce food fast and really nutrient dense, as long as you're getting a good quality seed, because the all the oils and fats are stored in the seed, as you know. So if you're getting a good quality seed that's got these good fats in it, the seed's going to feed, the plant's going to feed off that seed in the first few days or the first week. And you just got to give it maybe a little nutrient top up near the end. And mate, you can have food, depending on your climate, anywhere from 7 to 14, and a really colder time, 21 days. But you can have food up and running very, very quickly. And you only need a little vertical space, right?
Yeah.
You stack them all on top of each other. They don't need a lot of light. They just need good airflow and some basic skills on how to raise seeds. And generally you might go 2 or 3 times where you don't do so good. By your 3rd or 4th time, you're getting it wired,
Yeah.
You can produce that 25% that I was talking about within around about, say, on average 2 weeks. If you're doing, say, broccoli sprouts, some sunflower in summer, some radish, and like in the cooler months, rocket, arugula, those brassicas. And then you grow a little bit of like baby leaf onwards. So you start harvesting from that. Believe you me, you've got, on some days, you've got 50%, if you don't mind eating fresh greens, on your plate at certain days within, if you're doing the baby leaf mix with the microgreens, within a month. That's very fast to have fresh food on the plate.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like you said too, very easy to grow, very set up a very inexpensive system where all, really again too, all you're looking for is your seed supply in order to keep it going. And and you can have tons of great stuff. I've got a video I'm working on coming out here in the next couple of weeks about what we do and how I do my simple, really cost effective microgreens growing, and again, brings a good amount of food. I've got greens almost every single day. I don't have to worry about it. Plus, of course, we got the stuff we're pulling out. Again, like you're saying, we got some lettuce leaf and some spinach and things like that we can pull right out of our garden spaces, even for us in the middle of winter right now, but some of that, and then add all of these microgreens we're able to produce to add some, actually, and again too, you're talking about arugulas and radishes and different things like that, really kind of pop in some fun little flavors into your salads and stuff as well.
And then you get some herbs growing, depending on your climate. So annuals you could get 3 to 6 months. I'm blessed with nearly all year round growing here. We can grow all year round, but, depending on the crops and stuff we pick. But if you've got some herbs that you sort of match in next with that, so I call that, that's a B crop. A crop is your microgreens, your B crops, your herbs and things. And, 6 weeks, you could be harvesting baby crop leaves earlier, but, 6 weeks, you're adding another element to things. So you've got your microgreens, your baby leaf, and then you've got your herbs that you're using in your cooking. And before you know it, you're consistently reaching that 25% mark. Consider if we look at 25%, you go, okay, well, $25 to every $100. So we spend $400 in shopping. There's $100 you save for that week. And it doesn't always work out like that. I know people hit me in the comments, go, no, it's not like that. But the basis of it shows that it is. And I think the actual value that you get from growing it and producing it yourself is just as valuable, or sometimes more valuable than money. Money's getting worth less and less every day, right? With inflation. And as we learn to grow and collect our seeds and things like that, I think I'm seeing my space now, after being a bit over 2 years, so valuable, so
Mhm.
valuable. I could basically have no money coming in if I paid the bills. We could still eat, and I just have to go fishing down the river and catch some meat. But
There you
you know
go.
what I mean?
Right.
Maybe neck a chicken, which I don't want to do. But we've got eggs, and
Yeah.
so yeah, we live. I live very cheaply here on our place now, and my wife's a great cook, so we both love cooking, so that helps.
Yeah, yeah. And again, too, it just kind of depends on your level of growing experience and those sort of things that you can do to supplement what your expenses are for when it comes to food. And then again, depending on the type of space that you have and
Yeah,
available that you can do. But if you do, I mean, have a decent amount of space and you can grow a good amount of your food supplies. Um, I would highly recommend that because of a big point that you just brought up. I think this is a huge part of the food growing experience is the experience.
for sure.
It's one thing to go and get some, some veggies or some fruits and things like that at the market. I prefer a good farmer's market versus going to the big box market. But either way, there's that experience. You get to go down there, you get to pick out a nice variety, you get to purchase it, you take it home. There's that. But when you grow it yourself, you've got this whole other experience. And if you've started from seed and done things, and for me, I just started my peppers for my pepper garden this year, just this last week. You know what I mean? So again, there's nothing more exciting about getting things started. So it's uplifting. I've got that excitement for what's to come in the growing season. I get the process of growing these plants throughout the year, and then there's going to come a time later this season where I'm harvesting, pulling off all these wonderful, delicious looking pods off of all these different plants, and doing the different things that I'm doing with them, and I'm getting that reward from it. But it's that whole growing process that's rewarding,
Sure.
throughout the whole season. We get this whole experience that we get that you can't get by just going and purchasing some food.
Yeah, I think people forget about the whole thing about failure as well. Actually,
Yeah,
failure
yeah.
is good because we learn. So when we fail, we learn, and then
Hmm.
we go, okay, well, we made that mistake. And people need to sort of. This is something that I tell a lot of people that come here to visit me, to purchase compost and get advice and stuff. I say, don't be afraid of failure, and if the crops aren't doing so good this year, certain ones, just pull them out and bin them because it might not be the season might be right or the weather might be right. Like I had to get rid of all my tomatoes because they just it was so wet, the humidity. Like we got 80% humidity the last few days. So they just don't like it. And so yeah, I had to just, go, okay, well I'll start again. I've got new tomato seedlings growing. But
Hmm.
yeah, we had to, I had to bin them. So, I look at a percentage of how much I lose. Usually can be around 10 to 15% every year, and
Yeah,
or for a certain season. So I'm pretty happy with that. But don't let failure bring you down to stop you from what you're doing,
yeah,
because you'll get success in other areas.
yeah.
Um, that's something that I think is really important that no one really discusses much.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And I think that's another great point, though, is that learning process, this gaining of this knowledge and everything as well, too, is another part of the, sense of empowerment that you get. For me, like I had no clue. I'd grown tons of house plants and that sort of thing, but I had no clue until I grew that first, cucumber, and we're eating this first cucumber and eating this food, and just the idea of like, wow, I can grow something myself. I can actually do this. There's this separation, I guess, a lot of us have between us and the farmer, until we become the farmer ourselves. And it's not that hard to do either, for even all of you out there who think you got brown thumbs. I guarantee you actually got some green thumbs out there that you can't even imagine. But it's that sense of empowerment, that knowledge that we get, knowing that we can take a seed and grow something and grow some food for ourselves.
And make a few mistakes along the way. So
Exactly, that learning process.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mentioned so I like to talk about sort of like starting off small and then expanding out. So, and always don't expand out further than you can. So when you start off small, you got that empowerment of success. But if you start off too big too quickly and you don't have time and you're making lots more mistakes than what we were just talking about, that can really sort of bring you down, and then you give up quickly. So this is why I always mention, predominantly through my channel, is to start off small and then work your way up to a scale where you can manage it effectively. So we spoke about microgreens. Not everyone likes microgreens, but it is a way to get into growing food, fresh food, fast. Then you've got your baby leaf, which you can turn some microgreens into a baby leaf crop. And then, you've got your herbs and things. So we're talking about a small system that could be even on a veranda, little courtyard, or whatever, growing in pots and maybe a little bit in the ground, or whatever. And then, before you know it, you're harvesting some parsley, you're harvesting some basil, you got some oregano to spice your meat up, different things. You go, okay, well, I might do some perennials now. So I'll grow a couple of chili plants in pots and test those and make sure I got time to take care of them. And then you're just slowly sort of expanding out, and you can grow things like there's cucumbers that grow like dwarf style ones. And they're always written on the label. It says suitable for pots. Now there's certain tomatoes that, determinants that are suitable for pots and containers. So I recommend people move out that way, just slowly, and just slowly expand out until eventually they go, hey, I've got a bit more time. And I really like this, and I've learned a bit. I've had a few failures, and I believe I could go a little bit bigger. So then maybe a raised bed or a no-dig system, something like that, and move into the next level. So just step by step, slowly, and you always end up, what happens is you get very excited. I know you've probably done this as well, Enoch. So I've done it a million times, and I'll probably make the same mistake again.
That's right.
And then I've got to go back and bring it back down. I see farmers do this as well quite a lot, but they learn as they go. They put themselves in high risk situations, and gardeners, we can do that as well. Where our high risk is really our time, because our time's so valuable. So that's what I really recommend to people, is just start off slow and just build out. And then you bring your failure down to a lot less, and you get that reward that we've been speaking about. And eventually you end up with that 25% or more on your plate, and it's quite invigorating.
Yeah, it really is. Again, too, that one of the reasons, and many of the reasons actually, why I really just enjoy growing my own food, gardening in general, and all of that, again, too, is the overall experience that we get from it that we don't really understand until we get going and get growing. So that's why I tell people out there, get out there and empower yourself and grow a garden, and find out all of these other great things that you get along the way. And again, growing food, getting all this delicious food, and being able to have that experience as well too, is just really something else. And again, coming back to kind of again, like I said, about a lot of what you're doing a lot more recently in your videos is, talking about how people can really empower themselves, in a sense, financially, through gardening. Again, food isn't cheap out there, and growing it, can be really inexpensive. We don't, it doesn't really have to be as expensive as a lot of people believe it should be, right?
Correct. It's sort of starting off slowly. So if you've got a good backyard, or just even a small space that you've got enough room to start growing in the ground, the concept is, what I teach is really to work on the soil first. So really get that soil. You're feeding the soil more so than giving food to the plants. So once you build a good soil profile and a good structure and get a living soil going, you get better results from my experience over time. Less pest problems, less disease, bigger crops, things like that. So that's sort of the next step that I recommend to people, is starting to understand your soil type, your demographic of where you are, and then start working with the soil, because as you improve your soils over time, the quality of your garden, the quality of your produce just improves. And surely there's other things that we need to learn, such as habitat for insects and companion planting and all these other things. But people get too caught up above the ground and forget there's this whole living system below the ground.
Yeah.
It's really very, very important at that beginning stages, because if you don't have your soil right, just come up against more and more problems over time. Now, some plants grow much easier in crappy soils, like the last guest, was it Scott? Scott, was it?
Yeah, Scott from New Garden Road.
About a plant called Egyptian spinach.
Yeah.
Now, this is it's an interesting plant. It comes right back from the time of when the Egyptians were growing food along the river. It's got a great history, and there's a few different varieties now. But I discovered that in the Philippines when I was there about 7 years ago, and it was just growing wild. And this person showed me this food, and then we started cooking with it. And I've grown it here at home and things. And so that plant grows quite well in average poor soils, almost like a weed in some thing. It's related to okra, so it's very health beneficial. So some things will grow better in soils that aren't so great. But generally, overall, if we really take good care of our soil and learn about soil before we jump in too fast, our results usually come out much better than expected. And unfortunately, the history of horticulture since World War II isn't good. They haven't been teaching about soils, been teaching about growing everything's above the ground. So a lot of our books and education needs to step back and become more regenerative. And that's the way things are going now. So that's a really good thing to see.
Yeah, the regenerative processes and the systems and things that you can utilize in any type of garden, because, and again, too, this comes back to creating an inexpensive garden experience. Ultimately, that's kind of what we find, is that when we're producing our own compost, or as we touched on, worms and things like that, we're really creating some really inexpensive systems to give our garden really what's most essential. And I think that's one of the bigger lessons we learn from being a new gardener to a semi-experienced gardener, in those first few garden seasons. We start to learn the fact that we're actually gardening soil. We're soil farmers more so than we are the rest of what we're growing. I mean, the rest of what we're growing is kind of, the ultimate goal. But really, if we're looking to get a good result in that ultimate goal, we've got to really be focusing on the soil and creating a good living soil, and then learning about a living soil will help us teach us really, again, too, coming back to, again, the costs of gardening. We can teach us that that's what I think ultimately teaches us that gardening can be less expensive than what we initially think it is when we're new gardeners. Because when you're a new gardener, you're inundated with all this sort of stuff, fertilizers, nutrients, this type of soil, this type of thing, and all that sort of stuff, that we think that there's all these things that we need or we got to have. And I think when we learn a regenerative system or process for our own gardening, and if we learn it early enough in our gardening experience, we can start catching on to some of those systems that make gardening so much easier and cost effective.
The key word for the soil really is, in my opinion, is regenerative. If we're going back 7, 8 years, maybe 9 years, early sort of YouTube stuff, there was homesteaders, and there wasn't this information out about regenerative. I was very lucky and blessed in a way that I learnt about this regenerative stuff very early in piece, because the Byron Shire, where I grew up, permaculture it sort of bloomed here. It was like there was other people that brought permaculture to the world, but then they were students of those people, and they live around this area. And so I had friends that were permaculturists. We're talking, in the year 2000s or before, when it was sort of spoken about much, or, and regenerative organic farming teachers and things. So I was very lucky to learn quickly about this and put things into practice early. But the world just wasn't ready for it, overall. And now I think people are much more open to that concept. And so I used to have arguments with homesteaders that were still doing really heavy tilling and stuff. And they would say, I mentioned about the rain being, very vital to reinvigorate everything, and with the nitrogen and the minerals and things kicking into the soil, wherever. And they'd argue with me and say, oh no, it just makes everything more acidic, when after it rains. And I'm thinking, and they just didn't get it, you know what I mean? Like, and understand that when you're disturbing things. So a shallow till, sometimes we need to, let's get this right, and this is something that's a big argument. If we've got dead soils already, we have to go through and deep till and remove the compaction and all that. Otherwise, it could be years and years to get anything started. But once we've done it that first time, we need to not disturb the soil after that, once we start feeding it. And so basically, if we're going through in a compact, dead soil, we're reinvigorating, bring oxygen back in, creating this new house sort of thing. We're building a new house. Then we go from there. So once we start working with the soil, it's amazing. You think your soil's dead. It's amazing what nature does. Things just start turning up. And I really like the Italians of what they do with their tomatoes. So they don't disturb the soil too much, but they do trench digging. And it might be like they'll dig a trench and just fill it full of compost over the winter period, right? Whatever they got. You're not talking about like, oh, we've got to add banana peels for potassium or whatever, mate. It's just anything that's at the end of the day. Into the trench, covered over, into the trench, covered over. And then by the end, they're growing straight on top of it. And that saved them a ton of money. Now, you don't find a lot of information about it, but I believe that they would move to the next spot and not disturb that place again. And possibly they would feed from the top then onward. So their first dig of that system, unless they're going to let it go fallow and sit for a while and then do it over again, if that makes sense. So predominantly, that's a really cheap way to grow, and they do their tomatoes that way. And you look at the history of the Italians and tomatoes, and unfortunately, the tomato industry they stole it from Italy and took it to other countries, right? And put these Italian labels on it. It's not even produced in Italy anymore, but the history comes of growing great tomatoes from Italy. So we can look back in the books or talk to these older people and learn a lot about these cheap methods of invigorating the soil and growing food successfully.
Yeah, exactly. And again, too, like you said, you were mentioning they're kind of about tilling in the soil and these sort of things. I think someone else was talking about this in the comments as well. But in a lot of other concepts, there are kind of some give and takes to some things. Like I said, when we're establishing a space, it's good to kind of, like you said, open up some compaction, open up the soil, do that sort of thing, bring in some of that organic material, and then over time we're allowing it to sit and to rebuild and then do its sort of thing. And then we get to a point where all we got to do is just add some compost on top, and we should be pretty good to go, when it comes down to it. And I can imagine, again, we talking about worms and that sort of stuff. I have kind of a system that's somewhat like that. I don't necessarily grow anything out of it, although things will start. I just have a kind of an open compost system. It's not a hot one. It's a cold compost. I'm just doing a similar thing. I'm just kind of throwing whatever in there and on there. And then over the year, because I'll kind of harvest from it once a year, over the year, it's breaking down, and those worms. So I've got like instead of like the indoor vermicompost system I've got indoors, I've got them outdoors in this kind of cold compost system I've got out there, and they're just loving it. I go in there and I just reach into what is basically all of the, the food scrap trash or whatever. You just reach right down in it and just pull up handfuls of worms that are just going to town and breaking it down. So, and again too, that's another thing that's happening there in that sort of system you're talking about. They're doing with those tomatoes and stuff, is that they're just bringing all that life, and especially those worms and all of that, those worm castings and those sort of things that then start to feed and all that other stuff even deeper into the soil, just creating amazing soil life. And kind of as I was saying before, that's really what we're doing in gardening too, when it comes down to it, is we're caring for, building up a great soil system, and then the plant growing just gets easy from there.
Yeah, it just takes a bit of time, a bit of patience. But if you do it correct, if you learn over time for your mistakes and you keep moving forward, you find that it's a bit like brewing a nice, a bottle of wine that costs $1,000. The quality just gets better. And my place, if the people ever go over onto the channel, they can have a look in the community tab. There's a little photo there, just shows some bananas in the background, and we've got the upside of the fence, we've got the food forest happening, chicken run sort of down in the 1/3, and then the other side of the chicken run we've got the fruit trees and things. Everything's interconnected. So it's something that I teach more advanced gardeners, start to understand the connection of the microbes and the good bacteria, like these type of things, and fungi and stuff. So once you start building out, you make sure that there's pathways for them, for that one that you're first working on, because you don't want to overdo it and overmanage yourself. When you build your next one, if you make sure there's a corridor where these can be transferred onwards or moved through the ground. So for example, you're establishing a compost pile on one side, or you're feeding it like we talk about the Italians, they're not disturbing it. There's a certain elements in there that would for carbon and things that would be getting the mycorrhizae going and stuff. And they as mycorrhizae below the ground actually forms these massive big webs and networks, and it moves out through the ground. And do you mind if I share a story about
absolutely
how I proved that to myself? So my last garden down near Port Macquarie, very small space, but I was very lucky. I had a little side road along the road where I could make windrows and still sell compost and stuff. So, and I was in an area where everyone was retired, so no one sort of bothered me too much about it. It was just amazing that I could get away with what I did. But I had this little tiny courtyard, and I built the soil there over a good year, doing a bale gardening method on sand. And I come across so I had a really great papaya growing, and it was growing as fairly south to grow papaya, a little bit sort of there, but they still grew. And I had I had a concrete slab, and the roots went underneath the concrete slab of this papaya tree. So it kept it warm through the winter, and it just pumped. It's one of the best papayas I've ever grown. And I was infatuated by this thing. And anyway, because I was making compost and I kept on building the soil profiles and things, I planted another. So I got some seed from this papaya tree, and I planted some in a spot where it doesn't get as much sun as the other one. It didn't have the concrete slab where it could put the roots under and keep warm. It didn't have all these elements. But what I discovered was this plant was growing absolutely fantastic. And it after about a year, it had flowers and it was starting to fruit and things like that. And I was going, well, hang on, this is going against what was taught in ag school about photosynthesis, and these plants need to have more sunlight to fruit and things like that. And that's absolutely the case. But what I found was, because I was working on the soil web, and it was really amazing, I was like, hang on. And it just clicked. I'm like, this is connected up through the network of the fungi below to this other plant. And it realizes somehow that this seed come from the mother plant, and that's a parent plant to it. And I'm thinking, most people would spin out about this stuff. Don't tell too many people, Marty. They'll think you're living with the fairies, the pixies. And because they didn't have things, they're just starting to get stuff to measure this. And I'd heard other researchers talking about going, how do we prove it? Now they can put some type of, they can test the DNA somehow of a plant and then test it somehow, and they know that this is connected up to this fungal thing. They can do all these DNA tests and they can prove it now. But anyway, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I should tell people this, but this has got to be happening. And I'm like, I had to do a test to know myself. So, and I really regret doing this, but I cut the mother plant down, right? It was already a bit big. And I cut it down. It had a lot of papaya in it and stuff. And I thought, I'll know now if the food from the sunlight, so the photosynthesis and the sugars that was going down into the ground was being shared through a fungal network to its baby plant.
Yeah.
If it doesn't do well. And guess what? As soon as within a month or 6 weeks after cutting down the mother plant, a baby plant wasn't doing well at all. It was struggling. And I've just gone, wow, this stuff really, really works. And it opened my eyes again to understanding, going, this is where it is. This is where it's at. And by understanding to link these things up. And then I've been talking about, to advanced gardeners and things, the acceleration point. So you get to a certain point where you've built your mycorrhizae up, you've got fungal life going, you've got mushrooms popping up and things, and you dig a little hole, you see lots of worms and stuff.
Yeah.
And it starts spreading out like a big sponge under the ground. And you find that these worms, they're multiplying in this one spot, and they've got to get somewhere to go, right? So they just move out into the next spot of habitat. And then you get this acceleration point of the math is 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, 4 + 4.
Right. They start.
And things just start, and then all you got to do is manage it and take care of it. So it's amazing, God's creation of how this formula works. But it took that one plant of me to chop the mother plant down to really go, that's my final test. And so, I wanted to share that story because people may still think, oh, well, he's off with the pixies again. But I saw it, and my backyard is evidence now. And what we're doing out on Pepe Fasos farm, he's taking it to the next level, is something of a sight to behold.
Wow.
We'll get out there and film. We've lost a lot of stuff in the storms. He lost a lot of stuff in the storm, so a bit unfortunate. But it's one of the best farms I've ever seen in my life. And he does pretty much predominantly what we're talking about.
Oh, that's great. Let's see, I was going to say Janet's homestead was asking just a little bit ago, is it a good thing to buy worms and just put them in your garden? I mean,
Janet, I can answer that. So no, you need to have do your worm farm first, start to understand worms. And then once you sort of understand that, get an underground worm farm, work with that. You can make a DIY one, if you want to go cost effective. Have a lot of compost around the outside of your DIY farm and a lot of mulch and leaf litter or whatever you can use, carbon and stuff, and understand that around the outside of your worm farm is still a worm farm. And then once you learn how to do that, then you can expand out and learn the next steps of understanding how they thrive in the garden, and you can provide the right habitats for them.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're going to be purchasing worms, you want to purchase specific ones that are great for, composting food scraps, composting worms. And those you might as well, like you said, have a worm bin, have it specific, grow in your own worm castings right from there. And then if you're looking to do something outside or get garden worms for your garden that you can maybe even relocate to your garden, you can set up something like I was just talking about a minute ago, a really kind of just a simple standalone cold composting system where you're just throwing food scraps out there into the garden. Let them come, because they'll come, because you don't have to go buy them at that point in time. They'll come, they'll populate, they'll even get even more of them to where, like I said, I go out there and just reach in and grab handfuls of them. So if I want to relocate them to another part of my garden, I can just go grab them from there, put them somewhere else or something like that. If I'm, thinking that I'm not seeing enough garden or worms in those parts of the garden. But then also we got to think about worms will go where they can get food and where they can get things that they need. And so maybe if you're not seeing worms in any certain part of your garden, there might be a need for maybe just more organic material, more things. You probably just need to get some more compost in that area as well.
Yeah, improve the soil for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Right on. Excellent. So, real quick here before we get going, Marty, tell us a little bit about what you got coming up here on your channel. You got anything you're planning on here in the as well? I guess again too, I got to think about, and I got to keep this in mind. You're already well into your summer gardening, growing experience, and us, because we're starting the new year, we're just getting started with a whole new year ahead of us and all of that.
Yeah.
So what's coming up here on your show? And I'll remind everybody, links down below in the description. If you don't haven't gone over to subscribe to Marty's Garden, please do go follow that link down below in the description, and go give him a shout out on one of his recent videos. Let him know you saw him here on Let's Get Growing. But yeah, what are we looking forward on Marty's Garden?
So yeah, we'll still be covering, well, we've been growing mostly tropical plants because of the crazy weather, the humidity and heat and rain. So we've been getting a lot of success out of that. So a lot of things that I've been talking about have been these tropical plants that handle these crazy weathers. And a lot of people think, oh, hang on, I'm in temperate, I can't do that. But you treat them as annuals. I treat a lot of them as annuals here because I'm subtropical. So, and you can get a lot of food quite quickly, and you can establish systems. So I'm still going to be teaching about establishing and putting together these systems, talking about how we can grow food successfully to keep saving money at home, and how to put these systems, so systemize things into place so you get the success and try to avoid the failure as much as possible. And we're also going to be filming out, if all goes well, we're just hoping that this rain doesn't go too crazy, and the storms, because I just spoke with Pepe Fassos from 60 Farms. He's got to do a whole lot. I'd be out there tomorrow filming, but he's had more storms come through, and so he's got doing all this repair work. But we'll be filming out there and talking about different crops. And at the same time, it'll be, when we're filming out the farm, and we'll be talking about, again, we're building a lot of compost out there. We've got a big yard that we're getting trucks dropping off bamboo mulch that we're going to be using as a base for our composts. He's going to be using that to save money to keep building the soils on his farm. So we'll have some stories about that, and at the same time about what he's growing out there, and then on what I'm sort of growing here. So it's going to be an interesting time. We're going to have a combination between sort of what I'm growing here and what's going on out there, with a mixture of keep talking about soils and compost and improving the land with a regenerative element to it, because we really feel that that's the way we want to move sort of forward with that. So there's going to be a real wide variety for many people, but it's some interesting times ahead.
There definitely are,
because we just keep battling storm after storm.
One thing right after another, and it's the same for us over here, and I'm sure the same for everybody. I know they just had a bunch of issues and things going on over in the UK not too long ago. So, again, the world is kind of, in a kind of an excited state, and things are happening, and we got to kind of be on top of things as they do, and growing gardens and growing our own food and learning about all of that sort of stuff is a good place to get started if you want to feel like you're doing something towards something. It's a good thing to do. And following along with Marty's Garden over in Australia is a great way to learn more about growing your own food and utilizing your spaces to grow an excellent garden. And appreciate everything that you do, Marty, not just with your channel and what you do over there and everything, but again, taking your time to get up nice and early, again, too bright and early there in the on Sunday for you over in Australia. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. I think I saw Rick just put a question down there quickly. Have I had time to have a surf? I'll try.
Yeah, he was. I'm sure you'll always find a way to get some surfing in,
I'll
right?
try. Yeah, a little bit dry at the moment, but yeah, I'll try and find some time soon to get wet. But yeah, look, it's been a real honour coming on the show. Thank you, Enoch, for inviting me on
Yeah.
here. Yeah, it's really great, and I hope to appear again sometime.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
the near future.
definitely. We'll have to get you in and get you on maybe one of our garden roundtables or something and have a fun conversation as well too. Always some other opportunities down the road, and we'll definitely always keep you in mind. And like I said, thanks for taking your time to be here with us today, and for everybody else who's following along with us today. If you haven't already, get down below, click that link to Marty's channel, Marty's Garden, and yeah, and again too, we'll finish up the show here, and then maybe I'll chat with you for a minute, and then we'll get going today. So thanks again, Marty, for joining with us.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for coming to watch the show here. And I hope you got some good value out of what we spoke about. And yeah,
Yeah,
God bless. Bye.
yeah, at least a good jumping off point too, like I said, to going over and checking out all the great things that you've got growing on over at Marty's Garden. Thanks again, Marty, and we'll see you again soon on the show.
Bye for now.
All right. It's another great show here today on the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel. We've had some really awesome guests with us today. Scott Blackburn from New Garden Road earlier on the show. And then we just wrapped up our conversation with Marty Ware from Marty's Garden over in Australia. Really awesome of him and both of them, in fact, to take their time to be with us here on the Let's Get Growing show. So again, let's thank them by going and clicking on their links that we've got down in the description there. Go and check out their channels. And like I always say, go find something they're doing, a new video, maybe a new post on something that they're doing or something like that. Then drop them a comment on one of those things that they've got there and let them know that you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show. So yeah, we got lots and lots of stuff up ahead for us here coming up on the show as well too. Next week here on our Saturday show, we are going to be joined by Jenna from Growfully with Jenna will be with us on the show. It'll be great to have her back. She was really fun conversation last year on the show. So it's going to be great to see what she's got growing on for the 2025 growing season. So you won't want to miss out on that on our next Saturday show. But also remember, we are here every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time here every weekend with really great guests. And that means that we'll be right back here tomorrow for our Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show. And tomorrow we'll have on the show, it's our third Sunday of the month. So on our third Sunday of the month, we have our monthly gardening book club. And so tomorrow we'll be joined with Deborah Trentham. She's joined us from somewhere in Europe. She's from the UK, but I think she's out touring around in Europe somewhere. But she wrote this amazing book, Botanic Gardens of the World. I've been reading on this book, my co-host, and that's another great thing about our monthly gardening book club is I have a co-host for the show. Our good friend Mark Boucher Colbert from up in Portland joins me live for his In the Garden segment tomorrow and co-hosting our monthly gardening book club as we get to talk to Deborah Trentham, author of Botanic Gardens of the World. Just some really amazing botanic gardens. And I mean, there's hundreds of them across the world, but she really focuses in on 40 of some of the most amazing ones you'll find around the world. Really great book. Looking forward to that conversation tomorrow on the show. And then again, to next week on next Sunday's show, we're going to have another gardening roundtable. And these roundtables have been so fun this last year. We're going to do tons and tons more of them, and we're going to have back on the show. Originally, we usually get our good friend Christopher Bransdahl who joins us from all the way up in the mountains of Norway, and all of his awesome indoor gardening that he does, and especially his new grow room we'll get another look at this next Sunday. But he usually joins with us with our good friend Kang Star from the Kang Star channel, but Kang can't join with us for our usual roundtable, so I invited our good friend Mike Van Doozy from Keep On Growing with Mike Van Doozy. So he's going to join us for this garden roundtable, and we'll kind of talk about some hydroponics and some soilless gardening as we learned from Sarah's question earlier today, her trick question in today's garden trivia, that plants don't really need soil. And so we'll dig into a lot of that with Christopher and Mike next Sunday on the show, so you won't want to miss out on all of that. And so definitely, if you are here as we're finishing up today, definitely click that thumbs up, hit the like button, as well as subscribe to our channel here. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the bell notification to be notified, and definitely share with all of your friends. Click the links down below to all of our other social media, and our guests as well, like I mentioned earlier as well too. So again, it's just really really awesome to see everybody here today. I've been really enjoying watching your conversation as you guys all have been talking along with our great interviews we had today. So again, thank you all so much for all that you guys do here to contribute to such a wonderful show that we have here each and every Saturday and Sunday. And I really look forward to seeing all of you same time, same place, right here on the Urban Gardener channel for tomorrow's Sunday edition. So I'll see all of you tomorrow.